Welcome to Ability Assistance. My name is Phyllis Jones, Chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
My name is Stacy Leibowitz, Secretary of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance.
North Andover residents, please stay tuned after the show for important information about various towns' announcements. Today's guest is State Representative Tram Nguyen. Tram, welcome.
Thank you so much, Phyllis and Stacy, for inviting me on the show and allowing me to tune in by audio today. I'm excited for the conversation with you both.
Yes, we're happy to have you.
Yes. We're in the middle of the legislative session now, and the thing I see most on I follow Master List. I don't know.
Yes, I do too.
Okay.
Yes.
Is everything is budget, budget, budget. So where are we on the budget from your perspective?
Oh, great question. I mean, yes, we just got, we just finished with the House budget a week or so ago, and we're really excited about some of the things that we were able to get in there. But before, again, to the specifics, I want to make sure that you and folks understand the legislative, at least the budget process. We typically get the governor's budget. It's sometime beginning of April. We look through it. The House works on it first. And typically the last week of April is when we come together for House debate on the budget, which just happened, like I said, 2 weeks ago. And now with the budget completed in the House, we sent it over to the Senate. And just this past week, the Senate released their own budget, and they will have their debate within the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, we will try to find commonalities, and wherever there are differences, the two branches will come together in a conference committee to work those out. And then the budget would go back to the governor, and we'll continue to do that process. So just want to note that this is very much early on in the process, but even so, we've gotten great wins, particularly with the Department of Developmental Services, DDS. For instance, we've invested $1.7 billion for community-based residential services for adults, which is an increase of $273.4 million from the FY23 budget. We've also gotten more money for family support, $98.1 million for respite services and intensive family support to help primary caregivers, as well as Autism Omnibus, which is $52.6 million for services to people with developmental disabilities, as described in Chapter 226. And then we've also invested money for services for clients of DDS who are turning 22. That's $105.7 million for that. So all of this is really exciting because the budget really sets aside money for rehabilitation for individuals, as well as supportive technology. As you can imagine, given that what we've seen in during the time of COVID, even now, like this technology that allows us to be here, right?
Exactly.
So we've also invested $2.75 million for supportive technology and remote services for individuals served by DDS. And it's just really exciting that that we're able to continue some of the programs that were initiated during the pandemic, and to kind of continue that for the recovery period now. And in addition to the direct service money going to DDS, we've also increased money for the Department of Transitional Assistance, which would look over cash assistance grants to caregivers and persons with disabilities. And so for TAFDC, for instance, which is the Transitional Aid to Families with Dependent Children, we've allocated for $424.3 million in cash assistance.
Okay,
and for the emergency aid to the elderly, disabled, and children, EATDC, we put in $197.2 million. So we're hoping, in combination with all of these cash assistance, that we're helping families to not only recover from the pandemic, but to thrive. And so I'm excited to talk more about other things in the budget, but this is really an overview of some of the funding that we got in there, in addition to special education circuit breaker. And another important thing that I care deeply about, and I'm sure you all do too, is the reimbursement rate for human services workers. And so we've put in an increase to raise the rates for providers' contracts. And I know that there's more work to be done, but this is certainly an issue that we'll continue to look at, because given the labor shortages, we want to make sure that we're reimbursing people at a rate that would allow them to come into this field and stay in this field so that they can provide the services needed for our most vulnerable population.
So Tram, sorry. Thank you for that breakdown. That was incredibly helpful. I think for everybody who may not understand the budgetary process. So that was, and there's a lot here to unpack. I'm not sure we'll get to all of it, but you really hit on a very important point about direct care staff and the reimbursement rates, because this has been a huge issue. I think COVID kind of blew it out of the water, because so many agencies, providers now are struggling. And it also feeds into the Turning 22 piece, where you have people who are in a long waiting line to get referred to places. There's a backup, or a backlog, I should say, because we've lost so many people working in the industry.
And what doesn't help the matter is they're being paid, if not the same as, less than you can get at
people at Dunkin' Donuts
Exactly.
and Mickey D's. So what I want to understand about this package that we're looking at, which I think is great, do we have some kind of breakdown of what that's going to look like, what we might be looking at as far as wages for direct care staff? What is the breakdown of this to help not only hire people but retain them?
That's a great question. I'm very much committed to this, and of course, with that increased investment in the pay, we're increasing that to the 53rd percentile, which is not enough, and there's a lot more work to be done, which is why I filed a bill, and I can go into detail about this. Essentially, my bill, which is H1231 F763, it's an act to promote an enhanced care worker minimum wage, which I co-filed with Senator Robin Kennedy. Because of this workforce crisis that you mentioned among care workers, including human services providers, home care workers, nursing care workers, largely due to low expected wages, this bill is intended to promote the establishment of an enhanced minimum wage for care workers employed by private entities that are largely reliant on state provider rate funding. It would cover all employees of social service program providers, including those in the human services workers or Chapter 257 workers, home care agencies, and nursing homes. And in each of these sectors, the bill would reform the state rate setting process to mandate that employers receiving state provider rates for these services pay all of their workers no less than 140% of the state minimum wage, which would account to about $21 per hour. To your point, we want the enhanced care so that they're not making the same as someone who's doing another type of work that's less taxing. And I would also require that the state set rates for these providers that are sufficient to pay their workers this enhanced minimum wage, and also to reform the rate setting processes to require a public hearing prior to the establishment or issuance of proposed rate regulations. And the hope of it is, to your point, to attract more people into the field, to help them stay there, and encourage us and encourage more of a pipeline to get more people into the field.
Let me ask you, Tram, you said you co-sponsored this legislation. Who in our delegation has signed on to it?
I'm going to have to look that up for you. So I filed this and so I haven't been, tracking all the co-sponsors. I might be able to pull that really quickly, but I don't have the information right in front of me at the moment.
We can always look it up, and
Yes.
then we can ask
Right.
them.
And you can look up all of these bills in front of, on the Mass Legislature's website. But just to know, again, it's H1231 F763. And if people are interested in this bill, to your point, they should reach out to their representatives and senators to let them know about the bill, to ask for their support, because most people don't realize that in the legislature, every session we're dealing with 7,000 to 8,000 bills, which are a lot of bills. And I can tell you, many of us are not able to go through all the bills, given all of our other responsibilities. And so if you are interested in a bill, we encourage you to please reach out to your legislators to flag these bills for us. Sometimes I'm not signed on to something, not because I don't support it, but it's because I might not even know that it's there. And also, just because I'm not signed on to something, it doesn't mean I don't necessarily support it. It's just because I need to prioritize, right? We all need to figure out what we need to put first and our capacity to take on bills. And so that's just a reminder to folks that it's more of a conversation with your legislators to let them, to make sure that they know what you're interested in, but also to kind of hear their priorities for the session and come to that understanding of like how we can work together to advance some of these bills.
Let me ask you this. You're taking care of the 22 plus, which is fantastic.
Yes, yes.
However, we know that there also has been a tremendous cut in services for the kids, things as mentors and after school care programs, so that mom and dad or mom and mom or just mom or dad can work, and that cuts into a lot of other things. And you know, I know as a parent who's looking at DDS services for my own kid, a lot of those services that would be most beneficial to specifically working parents, not just obviously, but you know, specific to after school type of programs, they've been cut and haven't been offered, from what I understand, from years now. In a post-COVID world, has that been brought up again?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, especially, it's not just relating to, you know, disabilities. I think it's just childcare generally. You know, the increase has just been really a huge burden on families. So the discussion is very robust. And this is something that we're, you know, we're very committed to working on. And particularly with the, some of these issues that you're bringing up as part of the Women's Caucus as well, this is a priority for us for this year to kind of look through what type of investments can we make to allow families to work, support their families, et cetera.
And also, we're talking about now grandparents are raising grandchildren a lot as well, and they don't necessarily have the stamina. Is that the best way to put it? The stamina
or the finances,
because they might be on a fixed income based upon their own age, so they're going to rely heavily on these services as well.
Absolutely, and I think it's not just youth, it's for those who have turned 22 as well. That's a huge issue because many of them have missed out, right, for the last 2-3 years of the pandemic, which is actually, you reminded me of a bill that we just passed in December of 2021, which is the COVID recovery law. And I want to remind people of this law so that you know that these services are available. We were able to appropriate $10 million for compensatory services for students with disabilities who reached age 22 during the pandemic, enabling them to seek additional programming and support after turning 22 that they may have been unable to access during the pandemic. And since then, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has been working with other state agencies and advocacy organizations like the Federation for Children with Special Needs to stand up a variety of programs that eligible individuals can access. And we want to remind people that these programs are available and that the Federation for Children with Special Needs now offers families a direct point of contact to assist with identifying services that may be appropriate and accessible, and people should reach out to them for these extra services. And they could call 1-800-333-0688 or go to the Federation for Children with Special Needs website at www.fcsn.org to learn more about these programs.
No, that's fantastic. Now, let me ask you, last time we had you on, it was part of the legislative roundtable that we had with all the 3 other colleagues of yours at that time. And was it the ABC bill? I keep forgetting it, the ABCD bill? What were they calling it? To overhaul mental health and how children are being affected by it in the hospitals, boarding times and things along that nature. Have you seen any results of that?
So that is still pending. There is still a lot of work to be done, and I know that with the budget behind us, we're going to turn our focus to many of these bills. And I'm looking forward to the conversation with the chair of the Mental Health Committee and others to see what we can do to move these bills forward.
I can tell you, as a parent who has a child with mental health, who's had a kid in and out of the hospital, the hospitals are moving kids around quicker. However, they're trying to get them out of the hospital sooner.
Right.
And I'm not talking with the services that they need. So just something to keep in mind as you're working on that bill, to ensure that there's appropriate oversight so that parents aren't being sent home with children and then having to do a round robin more often than they already were doing.
And the same is true for adults, because we've
Yes.
seen situations where adults have been kind of shuffled through the system and released without, just onto the street and without any other services or connections, and that has had really dire results. I think this kind of, to me, I'm going to ask this question based on what we've just been discussing. With COVID, because this past Thursday, the COVID emergency really has come to an end, so to speak. So where does that leave us as far as accessibility? And because people are still getting COVID, people are still struggling, and the mental health issues, and then also obviously the issues with the backlog for developmental disabilities. It's all kind of intertwined because people are not getting the services they need right now. And so how is that being played out through your work on the Hill, at Beacon Hill?
So those are related, but also unrelated issues. They intersect, but somewhat unrelated in terms of, as we've seen with the COVID pandemic, many of the issues that we saw prior to the pandemic has been exacerbated. So I don't think that these are issues that are going to go away because the emergency has ended, right? Access to mental health is just absolutely critical.
And it's ballooned
we have to work on parity to make sure that people are getting reimbursed for telehealth the same as in person, so that especially those with disabilities, can have better access. And I think accessibility is something that we need to continue to work at with or without the COVID pandemic, because we've seen how the pandemic has really prevented so many people from getting the resources that they need. And I can tell you that it's going to take a long while for us to be able to, kind of catch a lot of these people, especially children who missed out for so long. This is an ongoing process, and I can assure you that just because the emergency ended, that these conversations for sure will continue on.
I want to backtrack a little bit. You were talking about working with DESE. I'm sure you're aware that DESE required or raised the scores required for graduation for the MCAS, with absolutely nothing to speak to for children who might have developmental disabilities, mental disabilities, learning disabilities. Has that been discussed, as far as you're aware at all, in terms of working with DESE and trying to put something in place so that these kids can still graduate with a high school diploma and be able to do what they're supposed to do in order to get that diploma? Because I think we can all agree here that diploma is the baseline, not a certificate of completion, but a diploma.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that you brought this up. This is exactly why I signed on to the Thrive Act, which is H495 S246, an act empowering students and schools to thrive. I know that we've had this conversation in the past. Standardized testing as a graduation requirement has high stakes consequences, and I don't necessarily agree with that, because these tests disproportionately harm people of color, low-income students, English language learners, and those with learning disabilities, and blocking their ability to graduate from school. That is just very concerning to me. And so this bill would essentially propose better ways of assessing students' knowledge and skills rather than standardized testing. They propose performance-based assessments to tell of what students have learned by having them actively demonstrate their knowledge and skills by doing instead of filling out bubble sheets, right? Students completed tasks or projects requiring them to apply knowledge and explain their process and methodology in solving a problem. And they could explain a phenomenon or answer a question or hypothesis or conduct inquiry or create original work. Just other ways for them to demonstrate their knowledge of what they've learned outside the traditional ways that teachers assess students learning every day. By doing that, we can get a clearer picture of what they know and what they can do. And so I am very much supportive of this because I just think that MCAS scores measure a narrow range of academic skills and tell very little about a student's ability to apply knowledge to real world problems. And they also ignore the important personal and interpersonal skills that adults need for success in college, career, or even living in our communities. And so I am a huge supporter of finding alternative ways to assess students, but not holding them back from graduation just because they cannot, they just don't learn the same way, or they cannot score well on this test that really doesn't measure a whole broad range of things.
No, and I mean, I always put it out there. You don't want to know my SAT scores. Right. You don't want to know my LSAT scores. For those people who don't know, that's the law school admission test. And it took me 4 times to pass the bar exam. But I don't consider that as a measurement of what type of an attorney I am or what type of an individual I am. So, and I don't have, to the best of my knowledge, any of those impairments that other children or other adults might face.
Well, it's putting people into a box, right?
Exactly.
Because I've never done well on standardized testing either. That has always been a struggle where my skills are in other areas. So it's basically putting everybody into one box. This is what you have to accomplish.
Exactly.
And
that's you've accomplished so much as well.
And so have you. I mean,
thank you.
Not everybody learns the same way. I mean, we've seen that over the years. That's why these changes need to be made. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, especially at the high school. I mean, they already have to take the SAT if they choose to move on to college.
And that's traumatizing. Because I'm with you with the SAT scores.
I think one of the counter arguments to all this is, well, how are we going to assess, the students? But like I said, there are many other ways to do it. And of course, we're not looking to eliminate MCAS testing overall because that's required by federal law. But the whole graduation requirement, what's so key here, this changed in 2003, and just look at in the last 20 years, the harm that it has done. And so I think that there has to be a robust conversation this year about how to move forward from this.
Agreed.
Now, I think one thing that COVID has taught us is that there are so many pieces to the puzzle, sort of like with what you and I do, Stacey, in terms of you never know what disability, mental health, whatever that terminology is that you want to use, that you never know what it is you need until all of a sudden it's not there, even as something as simple as an automatic door opener. And I think what COVID has really highlighted for us, and obviously for our state legislators, is that there are pieces that are missing. Now all of a sudden, more and more of us are realizing, hey, I needed that too.
Yeah.
And I assume you're hearing more and more about that as well, Tram?
And that probably feeds in, not to interrupt, but that feeds into the technology piece, Tram, and that would be great if you elaborated on that, because that is something that we definitely saw as an issue going through COVID, access to even iPads or computers and other assistive technology.
And we were so fortunate here in North Andover. Our school system gave out Chromebooks to all the students, but not every community is as fortunate as North Andover is to be able to have those resources available to them.
So what does that look like?
Yeah. We're seeing great discrepancies, and just And this is something that we're looking at, especially access to broadband. You know, we're lucky here in this area that we have great broadband, but, you know, other parts of the state might not be so lucky. And your education really should not be so dependent on your zip code. So I'm fully with you in thinking through and working on making sure that we have the resources made available to those who may not have access to some of these to the technological needs that they may have to have in order to be successful in school and work and otherwise.
Now let me ask you this. I'm going to turn the conversation a little personal on you, Tram. So you've been on the state legislature, what is it, 4 terms now?
Oh, my 3rd term, but
your 3rd term. Okay, so your 3rd term.
It seems like it's a whole time.
And so it's been your 3rd term, and you've also been a student at a special program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government.
Yes, I am. I'm in the mid-career program as well, part-time, because I'm a full-time legislator. You can only do so much in a day.
So how is going to that program assisted you thus far, since you're only halfway through, not to say only, but you are halfway through that program. How is that program assisted you in terms of being able to bring greater insight and greater services to what you do here for the people of your district?
Oh, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I've been actually thinking about this a lot because I've been able to apply a lot of what I've been learning in these programs, from negotiations, leadership, to just using behavioral science to nudge people along in order to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, and thinking about how we can continue to work to bring more people in and be inclusive and not leave anyone out. And I think that that's so key in what we are doing in the legislature. The goal is for us to pass bills that would help people and not leave anyone behind. And that is exactly the type of education I'm getting right now to fix program systems and working with people and institutions and organizations to try to think through how can we make changes that will positively impact people and bring more voices in and come up with innovative solutions so that we could move our Commonwealth forward. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to have this opportunity to go back in school to sharpen my, toolbox a little bit, so that it gives me the space and time to kind of think through how we could be doing things differently so that we can actually make great strides.
No, and I think that's fantastic, because just like a lot of us who work, we take continuing legal education courses or
I'm
continuing
doing Google project management as well as digital marketing and e-commerce, which is so critical. So I think that's always a great thing. And also, I mean, bringing that back to people with disabilities and other issues that, that they're struggling with, it's always good to have that, ongoing education. So I think that's a concern too for people who have cognitive and physical disabilities, mental health issues, making sure that those programs are there for them to be eligible for as well.
And by having people who are fortunate enough to be able to expand their education, that can then circle back to being able to then provide extra resources to those who are in a position to make sure that those resources are provided, because they're looking at it through a different way, from a different perspective. And I think, Tram, that is absolute. I'm actually kind of jealous you're going through that program.
And I think that it's not even just the access to the knowledge and the education piece. It's also access to people. I have met so many experts in different fields who've been so helpful in the bills that I'm working on as well. And I think that's the type of interactions, communications, and collaborations that we need to be more intentional about. And I'm thrilled that I've been able to have this time at school to help build on that.
Well, thank you for your willingness to take that type of time out of your life to participate in that program, so that you can open up your resources to then bring it back to the people of your district.
That's always important. I actually something had popped into my head from all the legislative pieces that you're working on. When you're talking about salary for staff, are we also addressing the issue of transportation? Because, you know, when you're talking about different areas, access to programs, access to work, access to anything, especially in the more rural areas where that might be challenging, there have been struggles in hiring staff to do transportation as well because of salary issues and other issues around the job. Is that something that is being addressed as well?
Yes, that's certainly a huge part of the discussion, but as I'm sure you've seen too, last year we were able to make investments so that we could have free fares for buses in this area, which is a huge, big step. I'm just so thrilled to be in the Merrimack Valley for our program here, MIVA. They've just been phenomenal partners in making that happen for the Merrimack Valley, and I think that's a great first step in that conversation of how do we make things more accessible and affordable and build infrastructure so that more people will use public transportation, and that's certainly a focus of ours and a priority of ours going forward.
So to add to that, because and we have seen that in the industry as far as even the ride, which I know the ride can be a little bit dicey at times. It's a really great system when it works, but there have been some reports about people not being picked up, and I know that there have been concerns around that, and people have needed to use it. But also, I guess the transportation piece around those who may not be able to easily be on that public transportation because they need a monitor, they need to be on a van through an organization, but that's been a struggle. How, is that being addressed as well through the increase with salaries and just the funding? Because I know sometimes DDS will back up transportation and other departments will be involved through the state. So I wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on that piece.
No, I'm glad that you're bringing this piece up, and I'm just to be honest, I have not been in discussion on these issues, but I can certainly look into this further to see if there are any pending bills or just any pending discussion on this.
Thank you.
No, thank you. And if you do see something, please let us know, because we as a commission are starting to track this legislation so that we can report it back to the select board and let them know, so that if they choose to send a letter of support for that legislation, they're aware of it. Because as you well know, Tram, we've got the local, we've got the state, we've got, in some cases, the county, and then the federal, and that the intertwining of them, people make fun of political science degrees, but it really is a science to understand the engineering of a government.
Yeah, and the civics, the whole thing, like the way you broke down in the beginning, Tram, I think it's so important because not everybody understands how that works on all of these different levels and why we ask these questions.
Absolutely, and I think that it's so important to emphasize that collaboration among the different branches, whether it's local, state, and federal, and how we interact with you all as a commission. I have to thank you all for the great work that you do to raising many of these issues and elevating them so that we understand them better and understand how we can work together more effectively and efficiently in order to address some of the issues that you've identified as commission and have brought to our attention. And so I am hopeful that the collaboration will continue. It was just so helpful to be able to rely on our local government, the town of North Andover, to give us the support that we need, and vice versa for us to support them as well as the federal government as we're moving through the different phases in the past 3 years of the pandemic, and now in this period when we're going back to some form of normalcy, and how we can continue that partnership.
And as a commission, we continue to be committed. That's a long-term goal. And in turn, we want to thank you and the other collaborators, in our district who have also been listening and following through. So Tram, the same to you. We really appreciate that.
No, we really do thank you for your willingness to be on the show, even though obviously it wasn't your choice to be here, just audio today. But thank you for making sure that you were still able to commit to the town of North Andover and to Stacy and I and to the commission to be able to come online and to talk to us about this, because we can't do what we do without the support of you, and to some degree vice versa.
Exactly.
Because if we see something I mean, we worked with Senator Tarr,
Yes.
on a project to be able to get some automatic buttons installed at the Lawrence Depot so that residents of
Exactly.
North Andover who were having issues opening a door,
Yes.
just opening a door, we're not stuck again like we had that question. But we're going to wrap it up now. Tram, thank you again so very much for being here with us today. You can email Tram directly at tram.nguyen, and that's Nguyen at mahouse.gov, or you can call her at 617-722-2680. You can learn more about what Tram is working on at https, it's masslegislature.gov/legislators with an S /profile. Government has to have all of these. So /profile, and then the call sign is TTN1. However, if you really want to do it easily, go to mass.gov and just look up Tram's name. It'll bring you right to it.
Yes, it's very easy.
And if you really want to talk to the power behind her office, call Tobin or email him. It's Tobin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, thank you so much to you both. It's been such a pleasure catching up with you all. I hope, that we'll have more opportunities to continue these conversations. We, in my office, we'd love to hear from your listeners, from you all, and what's important to you. And I'm glad you brought up Tobin. Tobin Abraham, our legislative director, is phenomenal. He will most likely be the person to pick up your phone call and assist you in whatever way. And I'll also be working in partnership with him on that. But we look forward to continuing to collaborate with the state delegation, and I'm sure we'll have further conversations with you in the future, and I look forward to that.
Most definitely. And, for folks who want to reach Tobin, it's tobin.abraham, ABRAHAM, at mahouse.gov. And this information is special just for the residents of North Andover. The town of North Andover is seeking to fill vacancies on so many boards and commissions just like ours. Each board and commission has its own obligation, and if you're interested in volunteering, please visit the town website at www.northandoverma.gov and click on board and commission info on the left-hand side of the page to complete a volunteer form. Please contact Jillian Brothers with any questions at jbrothers, that's brothers with an S, at northandoverma.gov or 978-688-9510. And believe it or not, air conditioners will be, I'm laughing because we're sweating here in the studio. Believe it or not, air conditioners will be coming on sooner rather than later. And are you prepared for higher electricity usage?
No.
No. If you're not registered with the town's Community Choice Supply Program, might be time to check it out. You can call Colonial Power Group at 866-485-5858, extension 1 to learn more. However, you must opt in order to obtain the town contracted rates. It's not automatic. And you can go to colonialpowergroup.com/North Andover, or again, call 866-968-8065 and ask to join the Town of North Andover's program.
And I want to say thank you to our crew this month. From GLTS, we have Alec. And from North Shore Academy, we have Zachary Jones. And from Curry College visiting us today, we have Carly Jones. From Northern Essex, Cassie Buonanno. Sorry, I am never good with last names, but we're happy to have all of you.
Yes, and we're already booking into our next season. Join us in June when we end our season with our guest, Minnie Meva. And our next season will start off with our October guest, Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance. That is getting more and more needed. In December, our guests will be Waystone Health and Human Services. However, we're actively looking to book our guests for November and January of 2024.
I can't
oh my
get
God,
that far
that
ahead
hurts.
already.
We are actively looking for these people. We're closely trying to finalize dates again with State Representative Adrian Ramos, Essex County District Attorney Paul Tucker, and Governor's Council member Eileen Duff. And I've also spoken to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and a couple of others that we're still talking to. We're consistently looking for new topics here to explore on ability assistance. We would truly love to know what topics you would want to know more information about. If there are any specific topics that you'd like to learn more about, please email me at pjones@northandoverma.gov, or you can call me directly at 978-494-0136.